Good evening, and thank you for having us back at the Quorum. I must say I enjoyed my last session here, and I know Mr. Madhav enjoyed his session in Bombay also. But it's here also? Virtual, yeah. I think we both did it. I was with you that time also. Virtual, okay. But it's good to be here in person and to meet all of you again. Well, today we're talking about Ram Madhavji's book, Partition Freedom. It's a very timely book as we celebrate Azadi Ka Mahotsav. And in fact, he talks about partition freedom and he says that, you know, land were partition, but also hearts were partition. And how do we rebuild that again? Given against the backdrop of the narrative that is happening in the country also, it will be interesting to get his take on the subject and the thought process behind the book. But I'd like to just put a few thoughts out there. The book is told from the point of view of Gandhi and Jinnah. They are the two protagonists or the viewpoints. And in fact, Ram Madhavji has written the same book about 30 years ago. And as he himself says, he was very critical of Gandhi at that point. But in this book, he is kinder to Gandhi, and he explains his point of view. He says that Gandhi began with the whole concept of Hindu-Muslim unity. He's saying that should come first, and that without that, there should be no freedom. But towards the end of it, he said, you know, he was so this thing that he said, let's have freedom at any cost, even if that cost means partition. He also explains Jinnah's mindset. Initially, Jinnah was not doing politics or religion, but later on, of course, that's all he did, and he got partition as a result of it. In the book, Ram Madhavji also talks about a very interesting thing, that how Bengal was partitioned in 1905. And that was annulled later because the entire country rose against it. So he's saying for a partition of a province, the entire country got together and revolted. But when it came to the partition of India, no one wanted it, as he says, but no one really fought against it. Were they tired? Was there ennui? Or was there so much division that they said, let's just end this and, you know, get on with it? So all those things, Ram Madhavji is really, you know, I've encapsulated the book, but I'd now ask you to tell us a bit about the thought process.
Thank you, Priya, and thank you, friends at Quorum, for inviting me for a physical session here, in-person session. This book is about two partitions, the story of two partitions. As Priya mentioned, one partition was the partition of India's, the then largest province of Bengal. It was partitioned by the British as a trial balloon, we call it, in 1905. On the basis of Hindu Bengal and Muslim Bengal. But there was a revolt against that partition. The revolt was, in fact, the Britishers had returned to London. Lord Curzon was the viceroy. He writes to London saying that only the Bengalis will be unhappy. The Bengali will protest. But the protest was not limited to Bengal. It was an all India protest against that partition, forcing the British to come down to India. I mean, the King George V was forced to come down to India to announced the annulment of that partition. This was the story between 1905 and 1911. Fast forward by 35 years, the whole country in a way, when I say whole country, major parts of North India were being partitioned. Why did the country not stand up? When one province was partitioned, the country stood up. When the whole country was being partitioned, why country did not stand up against that partition? This book discusses what transpired between 1910-11 to 1947. It's a very interesting story. You know, as an author, I would be really happy to talk more and more about my book, but my publisher will be very unhappy. So I won't tell you the whole story, but this is one thing that is there in this book. The second is, as Priya mentioned again, it's about two leaders. When I say two leaders, they are not equals. Please don't mistake me that I'm equating Gandhi with Jinnah. Two different characters. Although there are certain commonalities. Both came from same Kathiawad region of Gujarat. Both were barristers. Both secured their barrister degree in London. Both joined Congress at different times. Jinnah joined first, Gandhi joined later. But then, right from the beginning, their paths completely differed. And it is the story of these two leaders. Because ultimately, when we talk about India's partition, these were the two leaders who played the most critical role. I discussed that in this book. So it is about two partitions and two leaders. Here, one small correction, Priya. Gandhi was, throughout his life, against partition. Right till the end. I mean, even after Nehru went and agreed with Mountbatten that, okay, we will sign on June 3rd plan, Gandhi gets so upset because Nehru did not inform Gandhi that he was going to sign on June 3rd plan. So Gandhi, on 10th June, this was 1947 I'm talking about, 10th June, he approaches Mountbatten with a proposal that please hand over the whole country to Jinnah. Please don't partition this country. Hand it over to Jinnah. Mountbatten was taken aback. Mountbatten says, you see, I'm not going to ask you how Nehru will react, because everybody knows Nehru will immediately reject it, oppose it. But I will ask you how Jinnah would react. So Gandhi remains silent for a minute and then says, Jinnah will say, this is wily Gandhi. This is Gandhi's mischief. Today he will say, he will give the whole country to me. He will first push you guys out, the British out, then he will kick me out. So I don't want that, just give me my Pakistan. So why I'm saying this is, Gandhi, until the last moment, was very insistent that country should not be partitioned. For one very important reason. That is the thrust of my book. Gandhi's argument was that it's okay. I mean, if in the world, new countries are created from time to time on various reasons. But the reason in this case was that we were two different peoples. That Gandhi said, I cannot accept that. I'm not against self-determination, or I'm not against people asking for rights. But to say that Hindus and Muslims are two different peoples is something that I won't agree. So on a principle, he was opposed to partition, not for any political reasons. In fact, when finally it all was over and he was forced to support Nehru and Patel's decision in front of the Congress Working Committee, because Congress Working Committee was up in arms. They said, how can you agree for partition? India is a great country, you cannot partition it. Then Gandhi convinces them, okay, now that everything was over, our leaders had already signed on June 3rd plan, let us go ahead with it, let us agree. When he was climbing down the dais, one enthusiastic Congress Karyakarta bumps into him and says, Gandhiji, what a great day today is. Our great agitation for India's freedom has succeeded. This Ahimsa movement has succeeded, we became independent. Gandhi wryly says, yes, our great Ahimsa movement has succeeded, but the general is defeated. Meaning I am defeated. Because this is not what I wanted. So my thrust in this book is, again, since I talked about two lessons, these two lessons. This book is not to blame anybody, because I believe in two things. One is, history should not be seen from today's prism. If you want to analyze history, go to that period and analyze it. You can't judge historical events by today's standards, because that was a different time and different situation. Secondly, there are no ifs and buts in history. Had it not happened, it doesn't work in history. So my objective was not to pin blame on Gandhi or somebody. My only objective was that these two lessons we should learn from this whole thing. That number one, partition of India was not just partition of lands. It's more relevant today, because today you hear from our party, from our cadre also, the slogan of Akhand Bharat. What do we mean by that? Is it about geography? The partition that happened in 1947 was not just partition of lands, but also partition of hearts. What Gandhi opposed throughout his life, don't agree to this proposition that Hindus and Muslims were different. We actually put a stamp of approval on it in 47. So when you talk about Akhand Bharat, it's at one level, of course, territory, whenever it becomes one or it may not become one, whatever it is. But the division in hearts should end. So that lesson needs to be drawn from the story of partition, not just blame game. Blame to koi bhi kar sakta hai, of course. I mean, historic events can be judged from your own ideological prism and blame anybody. So my purpose of this book was slightly different. So this book throws some light on those aspects, those two partitions, two leaders, and two lessons. The whole book is about that. Thank you.
But To take from what you said forward, it's not to apportion any blame or anything, but your words in context with what Mohan Bhagavati has just said. He is saying he's justifying Hindu aggression and he's saying the persecution that happened by foreign invaders is still there. It's now come inwards because the mindset is still there. And he says that Muslims should not have an air of superiority about them. We can all live together if they give up the air of superiority. So how do you put those words in context with what you've just said?
Actually, Mohan Bhagavati's interview was actually a very long interview. It was a Hindi interview. Some excerpts have been published, firstly by certain RSS publications only, subsequently picked up by the national media. Naturally, when you put out excerpts, that will be picked up. That created the confusion. What Bhagavati actually said in that specific context was that, we are living in the mindset of war for 1,000 years. I mean, we have that mindset. I am, for one, very clear that this war narrative should end. Everything to start with, we are at war. That narrative is not good for any society. So what he also tried to say was that, okay, in 1,000 years, you had foreign aggressions, you had Mughals, British, everybody. So there was a war mindset in this country. And he subsequently goes on to say that this aggression and war mindset should end. This should end whether it is the superiority complex of some Muslims or Hindus, interestingly, he says, or communists. All of us should give it up. This aggression is not going to, in fact, he gives the example of Garibaldi. Garibaldi was a fierce warrior, but he was not a good ruler. I mean, we come across such examples in many countries. In UK, Churchill won the war for UK in 1945, Second World War. But after the war, people said, you are good for war, not good for peace. So he was removed and others were brought in. So Bhagavat was only saying that this mindset we should overcome. While saying that, he did use certain expressions which gave rise to this confusion. But his overall objective was to tell people that please come out of this war mindset. We are not at war now. We should have good discussion. The superiority complex, aggression, this should be given up.
But he says only one community should give up the superiority complex.
No. That's why I said. In fact, you should read that intro. In fact, that was not actually an answer to any question also. He was talking about something else. In that long answer, in between, he also talked about how this aggression mindset. In that he said, Muslims sometimes feel they are superior, they cannot live with others. That should be given up. Even Hindus should give up. Even communists should give up. He was generally saying, he was not actually taking any question on Muslims and their mindset and all also. But I tell you something interesting. That this kind of mindset should not be there. We should mingle with the rest of the Indian society freely. Was this stand taken even by Jawaharlal Nehru? In 1948, he went to Aligarh Muslim University. He asks the students, and it's a published speech. In that he says, I feel proud of my ancestry, my history, my great civilization and all that. Do you feel the same way? Do you also feel that thrill in you when you talk about your ancient history, your great leaders, your past? Or you feel cut off from it, you feel alien to it, just because Pakistan was created, we no longer have anything to do with it. Do you feel that way? Even Nehru asked that question. Gandhi repeatedly tells Indian Muslims that, you are not separate, we are all one. We are one community, one people, one country. Bhagavat said it in his own words, but Jesus, when that final argument happens with Pontius Pilate, Jesus tells him, you first define words, then we discuss, because words may mean different things to different people. So sometimes what happens is same word, if Bhagavat uses, it may convey a different meaning. If somebody else uses, it may convey a different meaning. So that problem is there, but otherwise he was not trying to single out any community or anything. In fact, he is just opposite of that.
But is there a change in the RSS from the thoughts of Guru Golgarkar, to what Bhagavat is saying now? Because this is not the first time. In earlier interviews also Bhagavat has been reaching out to the Muslims or the minorities, so it seems. So is there a shift in the RSS mind thought?
basic premise remains the same, that we do not recognize merely because of different religious identities, we become different people. That concept we don't agree. That has been the RSS stand right from the beginning. That's why RSS was opposed to partition, because you can't say that we are separate, so we have a different country. That has been the RSS position. But RSS, right from Golwalkar's time also, was never against a Muslim per se. Never against that. Golwalkar also gives a very important interview in 1972, 1 year before his death, to a scholar from Iran. It's published, it's there in Bunch of Thoughts. Unfortunately, Bunch of Thoughts, those aspects are not highlighted. So what he said in 1943, 45 is highlighted. In the course of evolution of organizations, opinions also evolve. Sometimes opinions refine. I remember Gandhi writing in Young India sometime in the early years of his entry in India, that is it possible to throw out British from India? Do we have the strength? Does it mean he was not ready to throw them out? But he led the whole campaign to throw out the British. So opinions evolve. In fact, that is again the greatness of Gandhi. Gandhi says that when you come across, his complete works is in 100 volumes, massive. One leader who created massive literature was Gandhi. He says that if you come across my opinion, two different opinions, something that I said at one place is different from what I am saying at another place, take the latest. And the reason he gives is, in the course of life, I have learned so many things. That is the humility of that person. I have evolved. Maybe I had an opinion in 1915, but 1940, take the latest. So even in RSS case, it has evolved as an organization. So in 1972, Golwalkar tells Professor Gilani, who came from Iran, that we call about Indianization and all that. It doesn't mean a Muslim or a Christian should give up their faith and become Hindus. Actually, everybody should follow their religion without any interjection, any obstruction. We should teach all good things in all religions to all children. This is what he says in that interview. So organizations evolve. From there today, you see, as you rightly said, Mohan Bhagavati, freely interacting, even visiting certain Muslim religious or academic educational places, trying to understand what a madrasa is all about. He went to a madrasa in Delhi. So that kind of openness is definitely now there in the RSS.
Thoughts evolve. You said that earlier on in your earlier version of the book, you were very critical of Gandhi. But in this, you're not. So what has been the shift in your thought?
True. I wrote that book in 1990 when I was just 25 years old. Okay. As a young man, young blood, with little knowledge. At 25, how much would you have read? So based on your half-baked knowledge, you attempted it. I was editing a journal at that time in Andhra Pradesh. So I wrote a book. In fact, I wrote that book in 10 days. So
I think you should take my job.
Very interesting. I don't want to make it very personal, which I don't like also. But the situation I'm telling you, my father died. So we are South Indian Brahmins. We are supposed to stay at home. We cannot leave our house for 13 days. So for 10 days, I had nothing to do except, of course, visitors coming and talking. So I sat at home and completed that book. So obviously, it is not going to be a perfect book. It was in Telugu. But subsequently, I went deeper into it. I studied lots of books, and I realized that what we understand about partition is not full. We either narrate the tragedy of 47, which is important, the kind of murderous history we inherited during that period of partition. We will have many people here also who probably come from those families who had migrated from this side to that side to this side. I must say that the victims of violence were on both sides, and in very large numbers on both sides. So even there, you can't say only Hindus were killed or only Muslims were killed. But depending on which side of the fence you are, you give your narrative. That's fine. But we must remember that large-scale deaths happened across the border. That tragic history is one part. But the whole sequence of events, especially between 1905 and 1947, are very important, because after all, countries have to remain one. You can't afford countries to get partitioned every now and then. India's integrity, at least for people like us, is very sacrosanct. So if India were not to face another partition, especially on this kind of lines like religion, etc., we need to understand the sequence of events that had led to that partition. It was not an overnight decision. So many things happened between 1905 and 1947. My book focuses on that.
But a lot of it, not to say what's in your book, but I noticed there is a thread which is running, which is the politics of appeasement. That which gave the Muslim League a leg to stand on, and then Jinnah stood on that stool. And the Congress itself, because of Gandhiji, they were appeasing the Muslim League. They were, whether even the color of the national flag. Initially, they said we'll have it one color, saffron color with a chakra. Then he said no, the Muslim League and Jinnah will be unhappy with the saffron color. So he went on with the tricolor. Vande Mataram was truncated. So is that the bone? Is that the one thing or the two things that led to the from 1905 to 1947? The change in...
Yes, that was a very important reason. In fact, that was the reason for Muslim League gaining strength. Please remember one thing. In fact, I highlighted it in my book also. Muslim League, even until 1945, did not represent more than 30% of Indian Muslims. I'm talking about Indian Muslims, not the whole country. Yet, Muslim League was given so much importance by Congress leadership. In fact, so much so.
Gandhiji or Congress leadership?
Congress leadership also. I mean, Gandhi was doing it from 1919 to 1940, 42. After 42, he said, in fact, that statement was very interesting. Gandhi was initially of the view that unless we win over the Muslim League groups on our side, freedom is not possible. That was the mindset not just of Gandhi. I'm sorry, I'm taking too much of your time, but it's a very interesting history. 1916 was the first occasion when Congress and Muslim League got together. Came together to fight against the British. That was the first time. The midwife who did that, who engineered that was Jinnah. Jinnah was at that time the president of Muslim League, but also a member of Congress. Those days it was allowed. So Jinnah midwives that. Tilak was there. Gandhi just entered in politics in 1915. Gandhi was not a big leader. Tilak was the senior most leader. Tilak was so exuberant that this conference was held in Lucknow. Tilak declared, "Luck now at Lucknow." He split that word Lucknow into two words. Luck now. What is the luck? Muslim League came along to support us. So that mindset that without Muslim League, no freedom. That mindset had led to certain compromises. For example, Khilafat movement, which we read in history. Khilafat movement was a movement for the Khalifa of Turkey. India had nothing to do with it. He was not the religious head of Indian Muslims also, he was the religious head of Arabs. But the Muslim League leadership in India decided that they should champion Khilafat cause. You know who was the first president of Khilafat movement? The Khilafat body first president was Gandhi in 1919. Maulana Abdul Bari was the Khilafat leader. He invited Gandhi to become the president of Khilafat movement. Those who protested and said that don't bring Khilafat into our, it's extraterritorial, no? It's not a part of our movement. Why do you bring it into it? Those who opposed it included Anabicent. Anabicent writes a long letter to Gandhi. Don't bring these extraneous issues into our independence movement. Let's all fight together for independence. But Gandhi's insistence was, if I do this, they will come with me. If I support them in their religious cause, they will come with me for my cause of independence. So it, in a way, became a kind of a bargain. Those mistakes were definitely committed, but then at some point, Gandhi realized that it's not working. That is when he says, you mentioned in the beginning, he says, you see, I believed all the while that without Hindu-Muslim unity, in the sense Muslim League coming along, there won't be any freedom. So I must first give priority to bringing Muslim League on our side, then I will fight for freedom. But now I tell you that first I want united India, not freedom. He says united India. Hindu-Muslim unity can wait. We will achieve it. We will continue to work for it. But first priority today is united India. I shall not let India partition. In fact, his famous statement was, vivisect me before vivisecting this nation. So those mistakes were committed. But the idea was, if I give this to them, they will come with me. But the most important point was, in 1937, the first time when legislative assembly elections were held, there were 4 Muslim provinces in India: Sindh, Bengal, Northwest Frontier Province, and Balochistan. Nowhere did Muslim League win elections. Nowhere. Jinnah was so heartbroken. Jinnah writes that today I don't have even entry into Punjab. This was Jinnah's situation. But in 1938, Congress started negotiations with Jinnah. Now, how do we explain it? Why Jinnah then? When Jinnah was rejected by Muslims, why Jinnah? So many things happened. That's why I said these are all the situations that had finally led to Muslim League gaining strength. By 1945, it became a force. And 1947, they achieved it. So that's another lesson. Don't entertain wrong leaders. In fact, one Muslim leader, Congress had many Muslim leaders, do you know? Congress movement had many Muslim leaders. Ansari Sahib hote the, Maulana Abul Kalam Azad hote the. One Muslim leader writes a letter to Gandhi in 1943. He accuses Gandhi of partiality. He says, I'm a Muslim leader in Congress. You never consult me. I mean, you never consult Muslims in Congress. But you always consult Jinnah. Because Jinnah is also a Gujarati. आप गुजराती आप लोग पॉलिटिक्स चला रहे हो. This is wrong. I mean, so much resentment is in Congress.
Strong deja vu, Gujaratis. Which I want to ask you, when will India get luck now? You know, this whole politics of divide that is going on.
Yes, I mean, that is something that we all have to seriously ponder. I mean, I always say this publicly also, so I don't mind saying it here. That today, if we today come to believe that Hindus and Muslims cannot live together, that's the voice that we hear from here and there. The happiest person would be Jinnah. He would be, laughing in his grave. Because he was the one who was saying that, no? That we are not one people, we can't live together. That time we rejected it. We said, no, we are one people. In fact, Ambedkar had suggested population exchange. He said, let all Muslims go to Pakistan, let all Hindus come to Hindustan. But everybody opposed it. Nobody said no. Maybe Jinnah is thinking that Muslims are separate, but we don't think. So those who want to be citizens of India, they will be citizens of India. India shall not discriminate. We believed in that. But 75 years down the line, if today we start arguing that we cannot live together, then we're accepting Jinnah's theory. Should we? That's the big question. But that doesn't mean there are no problems today. There are problems. There are interreligious strife, interreligious issues. We need to handle them. But never to accept that proposition that we are two different people.
You know, we're also talking about narratives, and there is a whole narrative building that is going on in current times. Maybe it's, you have to overrule or rewrite a certain narrative that was led by the Congress government. But now, you're finding we're seeing a statue of Subhash Chandra Bose, we're seeing Sardar Patel, we're seeing Veer Savarkar coming up again, and another view of Savarkar. We had heard one version, we are hearing another version. So there is, of course, it is the need of the hour because we need other heroes and Nehrus and Gandhis. But apart from that also, is there a concerted attempt to put down, say, Nehru and come up with alternate visions?
We suffer from a big bimari, especially post-independence. If you see the history before independence, leaders who had huge, massive ideological differences never hated each other. Gandhi never got along with Savarkar because they had two different ideologies. But when Savarkar was in Jilla Badar in Ratnagiri, he was asked not to leave district. Gandhi specially goes to meet him to discuss with him about what should be done what more can be done for India's independence? So Savarkar tells him that don't, go after this, go on pandering to Muslim League sentiments. Tell them, if you come with you, if you do not without you, if you oppose in spite of you, we will fight for independence. Tell them frankly. Gandhi says, it's okay, you may think that way, but I think what I am doing is also okay. Let me try and bring them on our side. So Savarkar tells him that you see, but you will take India on a suicidal path. Point is, they disagreed so much, but still Gandhi went. Still Gandhi talked to him. He entertained Gandhi, Savarkar entertained Gandhi, that was it. Subhash Chandra Bose. Subhash Chandra Bose had to resign from Congress presidentship, not because of Gandhi, but when he was forced to resign, I don't go into the details because that's not so, it's very unsavory. But Gandhi did not stand up to support him. So Subhash had that grudge in his heart that you see Gandhi, for all his Satyavadita, truthfulness and all, he never stood by me. In fact, he writes a 40-page letter to Gandhi. But do you know who called Gandhi the father of nation? It was Subhash Chandra Bose. In 1944, when Gandhi completed 75 years, many greetings came, and that famous greeting from Einstein that many people talk about, that also came. Subhash Babu was in Singapore. From there he sends the message calling Gandhi the father of the nation. So that respect, Ambedkar and Gandhi never got along. But in 1946, when the interim government was being made, Gandhi sat on Nehru's head to include Ambedkar in the government. Nehru was very opposed to it. He said, Ambedkar was anti-Congress. But Gandhi said, no, he's an important representative of India's scheduled castes. He should be there. His voice should be there in the government. That was the culture. But post-independence, all these leaders were relegated to back burner. We simply said that, India's independence history means Gandhi and Nehru. Today, what is happening is those leaders, those others who had contributed enormously to India's freedom movement and who had very good relations when they were alive, they never had any issues among themselves. So those leaders are now being given their due place in history. I think it should be seen from in that respect only. It should not be seen as though it is against Nehru. In fact, I wrote it in one of my Indian Express columns that, by building a taller Patel statue, you can't diminish Nehru. Then somebody will build a little taller statue of somebody else. Then will Patel become smaller? A tall statue doesn't make another person small. Contributions make. So tall statue, okay, we respect Patel. Huge contribution. In fact, I would say, after Adi Shankara, one person who united India was Sardar Patel. First was Adi Shankara in 8th century BC. But then Sardar Patel. But he's getting his due recognition. Subhash Chandra Bose today, his statue is there on the Rajpath. These are good things. Every leader should get his place in history.
No, fair enough. But we're also hearing, as you said, another version of history coming up. You said there were differences between Nehru and Patel, but they did coexist. But now the whole version is it is Nehru versus Patel. It's not Nehru coexisting with Patel.
Actually, during their lifetime, it was not like that. In fact, it was Nehru and Patel versus Gandhi in many occasions, on many situations. Gandhi was at Nokhali in 1946. There was massive violence there. Many Hindus were killed, so Gandhi went there. Nehru goes to tell him that, this is cabinet mission plan, so we may probably have to agree to divide Indian provinces into Muslim provinces and Hindu provinces and agree to some kind of a separate administrative arrangement. Gandhi tells him, don't do it. But Gandhi tells him, okay, any decision you take hereafter, please keep me informed. This request he makes. This was October 1946. But Gandhi was never informed. When this decision of finally agreeing to partition was made, Gandhi was devastated. Gandhi sends messages to both Nehru and Patel to please come and explain why you took this decision. Please explain. Nehru says, I am too busy. I don't have time to come and explain to you. Nehru refuses to go. Patel goes. Patel tells Gandhi that, you see, we took this decision in the Congress Working Committee, the 10-member group. We had detailed discussion and we took this decision. And the next sentence he says, we did not feel the need for consulting you. Parallel, Gandhi's secretary, in his book on Gandhi writes that 10 years ago or 5 years ago, it was unimaginable that Congress leadership would say, we did not feel the need to consult Gandhi. It was unimaginable. But came 1947, even Congress leadership felt Gandhi is dispensable. So much happened at that time. So it was not Patel versus Nehru. Patel and Nehru, they agreed, disagreed. There were, after all, in any political system, leaders may have different views, but they always work together. In fact, June 3rd plan, when partition was signed, 3 people were there from Congress: Nehru, Patel, and Kripalani. Kripalani was the president of Congress. So these 3 were there. So they were together.
I want to come back to, what we were talking about earlier, when you were saying that, just a couple of more questions. The politics of, is more uniting. If we are going to be playing politics of religion, then we are giving in to Jinnah. But what is happening today is politics of religion, A. B, is it religion that wins elections in India? If we just look at it dispassionately as a political analyst, good economics, whether Chandrababu Naidu, Narasimha Rao, reformists don't win elections. But religion, I mean, 2 roti khayenge, mandir yahi banayenge. Matlab, 1 roti khayenge, andar yahi banayenge. You don't mind, religion is what fuels the masses really, rather than economy.
I don't fully agree with you. There were occasions when in India, religious factors dominated elections. There were occasions.
They still are.
But then I can tell you, I can give you a classic example. In 1992, that Babri structure was demolished. In 1993, in all elections, BJP lost. Kalyani Singh lost election in Uttar Pradesh. So, there is no such, Indian electorate is very wise. There will be people who would be probably resorting to that kind of discourse, which should be rejected. It should not be the discourse, whether it happens from this side or that side. Vociferousness or, this aggression, wherever it is, it should be rejected. But larger, in fact, Prime Minister Modi in the National Executive, he told his cadres to now reach out to leaders of minorities. Talk to them, tell them about government's programs and all. That should be the way forward. If somebody down the line is doing something differently, he should be stopped. That has been our effort. I handled some of the most difficult states in India as BJP's General Secretary, Nagaland. We had 12 MLAs in Nagaland, and we are a partner in the government. We have a deputy chief minister. They were all Christians. In fact, I remember I went to a rally in one remote place. One MLA hosted a rally. I was in charge, so I was asked to come. I went there. So he was telling his people, convincing his people that, what is BJP? It is Bharatiya Jesus Party. No, that is his way of... He won the election. And then subsequently he became a minister also in our government. So the effort has always been, and we formed a government together with PDP in Kashmir. We worked closely with them. So the leadership at the top level doesn't look at India's electoral politics or India's governance from the prism of religion, no question. But I do agree that there are certain forces that raise their head. We need to tackle them strictly. In fact, Prime Minister even talked about those who go and attack films, like that Pathan film and all that. He said, yeah, we do so much good work for the people, and you give one statement. Ajay, these is mostly statements. Mostly social media bravado, all this is. They don't do anything. Zero service they do to even Hindu society or a Muslim society. All bravado is on social media. These forces need to be tackled.
But you know what is said about the BJP, that your username is development, but your password is Hindutva. So you say कि हम करेंगे roads बनाएंगे, but घूम फिर के वो राम मंदिर होएगा. June 24th election bugle will be sounded on Jan 1st with the Ram Mandir. That is, you come back to that.
Look, Ram Mandir is, it is no reason today to look at it as any divisive issue, today at least. Because when the judgment came, we ourselves in RSS declared that we do not see that judgment as any victory to any group. There was a dispute, there was a judgment, let all of us respect it. And to their credit, entire Muslim society, almost 95% of the Muslim society has welcomed it. Because in Indian history, even Muhammad Iqbal used to consider Ram as Diwan-e-Hind. He was a great king of India. This has been the tradition in India. So Ram Mandir, at least now, there was a bad history. There was a history of strife when the demolition happened and all. That is a bad history. I do agree with that. But today, it's no longer a divisive thing anymore. A good Ram Mandir coming up there is largely welcomed by people. Maybe some people who do not believe in religion or some people who do not believe in Ram may not see that importance, but majority of the Indians respect Ram. So for them, the temple, coming up of that temple is a very happy kind of occasion. I don't think we should see it as
But
a
if you look at the political discourse of the day, the debates of the day, everything is कि कौन मंदिर गया है, कौन मस्जिद गया है, कौन राम मंदिर जा रहा है, कौन
Not true.
That is what is today's political discourse.
Not true. Not true.
We don't talk economy. We don't talk.
Have you seen Prime Minister talking even once about these issues? Have you seen that? Have you seen?
I've seen him.
Majority of the ministers talk.
Before every election, he goes to one temple and one the whole day. That's all we see.
Our problem is, you are all journalists, have this obsession. You need headlines. So you pick up only that line, no? See, he is speaking 1 hour about his developments. We are not highlighting. Inter alia, he says, okay, see, today Ram Mandir is coming. You say, Amit Shah only talked about Ram Mandir. Amit Shah's speech was for 1 hour that day. 1 hour he was only saying like Ram Bhajan, Ram Mandir is coming, Ram Mandir is coming, Ram Mandir is coming. Was he saying only that? No, he talked about many things that the government has done. But you have this tendency, na? You should desist from it, na? Even if that is there, don't highlight those things. If you feel that it is divisive, why do you highlight that? Ignore that simply. We all have to play our role, I'm telling you. It's easy to blame somebody, especially politicians. Politicians have to be accountable. Politicians have to be responsible. But I tell you today, we are accountable because every 5 years we face the people. Do you face?
We face you
You
right
don't
now.
face anybody. So you do anything in your show. That should not be the case.
No, I'll tell you where I'm coming from is that before every election, you will see on the last day when there's no campaigning, there will be some temple walk, temple pilgrimage, which gets all the headlines. And that is the subtext, Hindu Hriday Samrat.
Priya.
Who coins these phrases?
Priya,
Hindu
you go
Hriday Samrat,
back, you rewind and see 2019 election. Any discourse on temple was there? Just rewind, na? It's not, I'm not asking you to go back to 1947. Go to 1919 election campaign. We did not talk about temple there. We talked about 5 years of Modi's governance. On governance, we got the vote. But some leaders in some state, that's what Prime Minister also warned the cadres. See, one minister in one state makes a statement against one movie. He says, I will not allow this movie to be shown in my state. That becomes headlines.
But he's the home minister of a state.
That's why he warned, no? That's why Prime Minister said, you please don't do those things because all the good work that we are doing will be simply ignored and only this issue is highlighted. They are against Pathan movie, which they are not.
Shah Rukh Khan should be happy with the publicity the BJP is giving to his movie. But on that note, thank you for coming. I wanted to open it to questions, but I think Ram Madhav ji is not well. In fact, he said he'd given. We can do a couple of questions. He said he'll take if there are any.
Thanks, Vivek. Just to continue on the conversation going on, Madhav ji, do you think BJP actually has an image marketing problem? Because आप इतना काम करते हो development में, and like you said, and there's a lot of work that's been done. I think anybody would acknowledge that. But at the end of the day, not with the masses, but with the chattering classes, the only conversation is around the religion. Why is that?
BJP has marketing problem outside of India. And BJP doesn't bother because it has to market itself in India. In India, fairly doing well with lot of public support and all. But no, your question is very important. I'm very, very conscious of this challenge that BJP faces. The gap between the image and the reality. There's a gap. And this gap is more predominantly visible in the upper echelons of our society, where people see things slightly differently. There BJP has to do a little more hard work, no doubt. That hard work means it's not about, rejecting people who are, nowadays we are very fond of giving this label of anti-national. If you criticize, we are anti-national. In public life, every person is subject to scrutiny. That, first of all, we have to understand. When I say we, BJP should understand. So the point that you are saying, if there is criticism, there is a problem of image, we should try to correct it. What generally is happening is, we immediately abuse them. In Sanskrit, they are saying, Sesham kopena purayet, meaning, if you don't have an answer, you will start abusing them. That we should not do. We should not brand everybody who is criticizing us as anti-national. They're not. Basically there will be criticism, but BJP has to probably work more on that. But otherwise, among the masses of the country, the leadership, especially BJP leadership, Prime Minister Modi, enjoys tremendous kind of respect and support. This irrespective of, I'm telling you, even religion, even among the Muslims, Christians, ordinary masses. Yeah, challenges are there at certain level.
Sir, namaskaram, sir. I had a question with a brief understanding of history. If I'm right, I think over 50 countries got their independence between 1950 and from the Commonwealth, 1950 to 1960. What is your take on in that context, our independence in 1947 and all the rigmarole we had gone through and the partition? Could it have been avoided, given that the British were anyway giving independence to several countries over the next decade?
Again, since I said it in the beginning, I repeat it, there are no ifs and buts in history. But just for academic argument's sake, I would say, when Attlee, the then Prime Minister of Britain, when Attlee sent Mountbatten to India to finally, prepare for India's independence, the timeline given was 1948 June. It was not 1947 August. Had we waited till then, don't take me otherwise, even Jinnah would not have been there. Jinnah died in 48. But we were also in a hurry. And Mountbatten was also, in a way, in a hurry, that, let us quickly settle it and hand it over to these two sides. In fact, in 1956, I think, Gandhi gives an interview to, it was Frank Morales or somebody, some Western journalist. He confesses, he says, you see, we were tired of this fellow, Jinnah. He was so horrible, he would not agree for anything. He was prone to violence. So we thought that let us get rid of him first. So we were tired. That was the operational word. The leadership was tired. So they agreed for partition. In fact, Mountbatten wrote that when he asked Nehru, are you sure you want India to be partitioned? Nehru tells him that, okay, you go ahead. I am sure in 2 years' time they will come back. Now my point is, can you look at a country like that? Abhi de do, 2 saal baad aa jayenge. How do you know? So, only about India if you are talking, yes, probably had we waited for some more time, had the leadership decided, no, we won't agree to June 3rd plan. In fact, Jinnah's greatest friend was Churchill. Churchill was very, very opposed to India's independence. In fact, Churchill said, these are all bootleggers, don't give independence to India, they will destroy the country. But he was a great friend of Jinnah. So he sends a telegram to Jinnah saying that whatever you are getting, please take it. Because Jinnah was insistent that I want full Punjab and full Bengal. Cabinet mission decided to split them. Jinnah said, no, I want full Punjab and full Bengal, then only I will take Pakistan. So Churchill sends him a message, you are an idiot, you won't get even this much. Whatever you are getting, you take it. So even Jinnah was not sure what he was getting. In fact, 1945, on record, Jinnah tells his colleagues, although I am demanding Pakistan, I know I am not going to get it. This was Jinnah in 45. I am not going to get it. At least I will have a big bargaining chip. I will have my provinces under my thumb, my control. So, hypothetically speaking, yes, probably we could have had a united India securing independence in 1948. And I tell you, many problems that we face today, the problems that you are talking about, they had their roots in India's partition. This mistrust, this acrimony has its roots in partition. We could have avoided that. We could have had a different history for this country. But again, history has no ifs and buts.
Okay, any last question?
Sir, thank you for this opportunity. Been wonderful listening to you. But I just had a question. You said even despite whatever the differences in their thought processes were, Gandhi was extremely respectful of people who had a different thought process. We don't see that respect today. Why do you think that is there? Is there no common goal, or it's just the environment?
Okay, see, that is the unfortunate reality with ideologies. Ideologies have binaries. In ideology, you need somebody to blame, right? If I have an ideology, I have to blame. That's why Jiddu Krishnamurti, Master JK, used to say that never have ideologies, only have ideas. So we are stuck in certain ideological frameworks, then you find the other. So in that, I know Gandhi gets the maximum abused from some sections. But also remember, Gandhi is one person who is respected enormously by ordinary people, not just in India, all over the world. Yes, ideological, from an ideological prism, some people do hate Gandhi, some hate Nehru. On the reverse, many hate Savarkar for no reason. Savarkar hating is a business in India. Just if you want to blame Modi, invoke Savarkar. And you are doing a yatra for Bharat Jodo, you say that Savarkar was a Congress stooge, British stooge. But those who went to jail, one leader who was awarded 50 years of jail term was Savarkar. 50 years. And you know that whole argument that he maafi manga hai, vagera, vagera. The first person to ask for pardon was Madhav Ranade, the great Congress leader, in 1912. So should we say that Ranade was a British stooge? Those days, the British had one legal provision that if you want remission of your sentence, you can write to the British. You say that, okay, I will do this, so please send me out. Who advises Savarkar to do that, you know? Gandhi. And Gandhi, on behalf of Savarkar, writes to British that they are young people, you can't put them in jail for 50 years. Their whole life is finished. So why not let them go and do other work? Social reform, other work, peaceful movement. Of course, British reject it. British don't agree. But today we say that he pleaded for pardon from them or whatever. That hate happens on all sides. That's what I'm trying to say. Savarkar is hated, Nehru is hated, Gandhi is hated, RSS is hated. So these are ideological prisms. But we live with it. Atulji last.
So last question. I think you've said history is the past. There's nothing much we can do about it at this stage. But looking forward, I'd like to know, what do you think? How does this play out in terms of our related to partition per se, with our relationship with our neighbor? Does this remain in its current status quo? Does it get worse? Does it get better? How do you see this playing out?
Okay,
I have a personal reason for this
I was
question.
going to say any
as a
vested
lot of people
interest.
know, but I'd be keen to know what your views are on that.
you see, we had a difficult relationship from the beginning. Right from the beginning, our relationship has been very difficult. We had ups and downs. From our side, I would say we have always made sincere efforts to build bridges with Pakistan, the government there. But somehow the system there doesn't support these initiatives. Yesterday also, their Prime Minister gave that statement that, after all, we all have to work together. India and I am ready to talk to Modi, let us live peacefully and let's work for our development and all. But in 2 hours' time, he issued a tweet saying that until 370 is restored, I'm not going to talk to India. So there are certain issues between our countries, you call it domestic politics or whatever other reasons, that come in the way of good relations between these two countries. This is not exclusive to any Narendra Modi government or anything. You may recall that Bombay happened when Manmohan Singh was the Prime Minister. We stopped talking to Pakistan for 1 full year. We didn't talk to them for 1 full year. After almost more than a year and a half, our bilateral negotiations again came back, restored. So we are passing through a similar phase now. After 2019 Pulwama, we stopped talking to them. But as neighbors, at some point, we need to engage. So we have to live together, we have to live as two sovereign neighbors, is a given. But these situations sometimes create serious problems between us. For example, we do a lot of track to dialogues with Pakistanis. In fact, I'm going to do one in this month and again. So we do those dialogues. There is an urge on both sides that we should work together. We should live together. It's beneficial to both. Today, Pakistan is facing its worst food crisis. One country that can easily help Pakistan is India. But Pakistan is willing to take it from Turkey, from European Union, but not from India. So this is a very unfortunate situation. It's after all humans. So this situation should change. We are in favor of that. Prime Minister Modi took the risk of flying by a private chopper to go to Nawaz Sharif's house. In fact, it was a nightmare for Indian security establishment, nightmare. He was only allowed to fly by Indian Air Force choppers. But he decided that no, as a goodwill, let me go in his chopper. So from about Vajpayee, he took a bus ride there. Even Congress government tried their best. But Vajpayee got Kargil, UPA got Bombay, we got Pulwama. So Pakistan has to change its course. It's very important. Pakistan has to really focus on governance, building relations. And today, this terrorism has now become the nemesis of Pakistan itself. How much price they are paying today? Whether it was TTP or other terror organizations, they are now wreaking havoc there. So the Bhasmasur that you create, one day will come back to haunt you. So Pakistan has to think seriously about these things. But yes, as two neighbors, we will be sovereign neighbors. Nobody says Pakistan should, disappear from the map. We are not saying that. But we have to live like good neighbors. Hopefully, we will be able to restore that relationship.
And get that Akhand Bharat.
That is Akhand Bharat. I mean, India was never one political unit. It was different political units, but people lived like one family.
Well, thank you, Ram Madhavi, for this conversation. And I always say you bring to the table a view of RSS one can understand. Thank you.
Thank you.